Today, we're digging into a question that honestly kind of breaks your brain a little. It's a question that starts with a number almost too big to be real: $20 billion.
You know, for decades, if you wanted to point to the ultimate symbol of a country's power and technological prowess, you'd point to something like this: a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. The USS Gerald R. Ford is basically a floating city, a projection of military might that's one of the most complex things humans have ever built. And on the other side, we have a factory, just a single building. So how is this even a contest?
Well, let's put some numbers on this. The cost to build that cutting-edge aircraft carrier, a project that took more than a decade to complete, it came in at a mind-boggling $13.3 billion. That's our benchmark for a massively expensive and complicated project.
But get this, a single, state-of-the-art semiconductor factory, what we call a gigafab, built by a company like TSMC, costs around $20 billion. No, that's not a typo. A single factory costs billions more than a nuclear supercarrier.
And that right there is the central mystery we're unpacking today. What in the world is going on inside that one building that makes its price tag dwarf one of the greatest symbols of national power? Let's dive in.
So, the first piece of the puzzle is the sheer upfront cost. In business terms, they call this capital expenditure, or CapEx, but really, it's just the price of admission.
Now, this is where it gets really surprising. You'd think that for $20 billion, most of that money is going into the building itself, right? And don't get me wrong, the building is an absolute marvel, an earthquake-proof cleanroom fortress. But that's just this tiny slice of the pie. The real money, this giant chunk right here, is for what goes inside the box.
We're talking hundreds of specialized machines that can cost millions of dollars apiece. But the whole story, the real headline grabber, boils down to one absolutely extraordinary piece of technology: the Extreme Ultraviolet Lithography Machine, or EUV. This thing is the crown jewel of any modern factory. And just look at that price tag. The newest generation of these machines, which you absolutely need to make the world's most advanced chips, costs up to $400 million. For one machine? To put that in perspective, you could buy a brand new Boeing 737 MAX airplane for less than that.
So why on earth is it so expensive? Well, it's because it's basically doing something that sounds like science fiction. You have a superpowered laser blasting a tiny droplet of molten tin, 50,000 times a second, which creates a plasma that gives off this special EUV light. But here's the kicker. Literally everything absorbs this light, even air. So the entire insane process has to happen inside a perfect vacuum using mirrors that are the most flawless, most precise objects humanity has ever created.
Okay, so the upfront sticker shock is just astronomical. But here's the crazy part. The moment that $20 billion check clears and the doors open, that's when the real financial pressure kicks in. Now you have to feed the beast every single day.
And believe it or not, the single biggest running cost isn't power or materials. It's an accounting concept called depreciation. It's just the value that an asset loses over time. But in this semiconductor world, the pace of that loss is just absolutely brutal. I mean, just look at this. You build a skyscraper, you expect it to last, and you write it off over maybe 40 years. A commercial jet, about 20 years. But all that multi-billion-dollar equipment inside the gigafab, it becomes technologically obsolete so fast that its value is written off in just 5 years. 5! So what does that actually mean in cold, hard cash? It means this factory is losing over $8.2 million in value every single day. That's a massive cost that's ticking up 24/7, whether you're making a single chip or not. And that's before you even pay the bills. On top of that, this factory has an insatiable appetite. It consumes as much electricity as a small city. It gulps down millions of gallons of ultra-pure water every day. And it needs a constant stream of raw materials and thousands of brilliant, very expensive engineers just to keep the lights on. So with these unbelievable costs piling up every second of every day, how does a gigafab even think about making a profit? It turns out it all comes down to obsession over two numbers, two incredibly unforgiving metrics that rule everything. The first one is the utilization rate. It's pretty simple. What percentage of the day are your multi-million-dollar machines actually running and making chips you can sell? Every single minute a machine sits idle, you are just hemorrhaging money. It is a game of pure, relentless volume.
And when I say unforgiving, I mean it.
Just to break even, to not lose a single dollar, a gigafab has to be running at over 90% of its total capacity. That's more than 21 hours a day, 365 days a year. There are no weekends, no holidays, anything less, and you are literally lighting money on fire.
So, if utilization is all about volume, the second metric, yield, is all about perfection. For every single silicon wafer that goes through the factory, what percentage of the chips on it are absolutely flawless? One tiny speck of dust can destroy thousands of dollars of product, so this is a constant, obsessive battle for precision.
And the financial impact of getting this right is just astronomical. A tiny 1% improvement in your yield, like going from 94% perfect chips to 95%, that one little point translates directly to an extra $204 million in pure profit every year from just one factory. It's wild.
And this creates this incredibly powerful feedback loop, a virtuous cycle. The companies with the best tech get the best yields. That means they make the most money. And what do they do with all that cash? They pour it right back into R&D to create the next generation of superior technology, which gets them even higher yields. The rich get richer, and it becomes almost impossible for anybody else to catch up.
So let's zoom out for a second, because these brutal high-stakes economics don't just stay inside the factory. Now, they have fundamentally reshaped our entire world. That $20 billion price tag, that's not a barrier to entry, it's a giant, unbreachable wall. It means basically only 3 companies on the planet, TSMC, Samsung, and Intel, can really afford to play this game at the highest level. This has led to this massive consolidation, where almost all of the world's most important chips are made in just a handful of buildings. And that creates a huge geopolitical vulnerability.
And that vulnerability is exactly why you're hearing so much about things like the CHIPS Act. Governments in the US, Europe, and Japan are looking at these economics and realizing they simply can't afford to be so dependent on a few locations. These massive subsidy programs are a direct response to everything we've talked about, treating chip manufacturing as a critical matter of national security.
So in the end, that $20 billion buy-in for a gigafab isn't just a business expense. It's a strategic move in a high-stakes global game. And it leaves all of us with a really critical question. As the price to build the future keeps climbing higher and higher, who's actually going to be able to afford a seat at the table?